Okay, pricing is the worst. Let's just get that out of the way right off the bat. Hey, I'm Becca with the Happy Ever Crafter, and I'll be honest, I used to absolutely hate having to price my work. As much as I love getting requests in my inbox for client work, I would procrastinate on it hard because I would stress so much over what I'm supposed to charge. 5 years in though, and I've learned so much about pricing. I've even co-written a pricing course for beginners called Panic Free Pricing. And in this video, I want to share with you the top 3 pricing mistakes that you might be making. Before we jump in though, I also want to point you to the description of this video because there's a link to my free workshop, which is way more in depth than I can go in any YouTube video. So if you're interested in pricing, you're going to want to go find that after this too. The link is in the description below, but you can also just go to thehappyevercrafter.com/pricing anytime. So let's get into these 3 mistakes. All 3 of these absolutely kill me, but especially number 3. Okay, number 1 is starting the work before you agree to a price or before you get a deposit. So every once in a while in our private Facebook group for pricing, we have people come in and they'll show a final image of the work they've done and they'll say, how much should I charge the client for this thing I made for them? And Joanne and I, my co-writer, want to just reach through the screen and do like a tss. Because seriously, if you take nothing else from this video, take this. Never, ever, 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 ever start a job without agreeing on the price. Nothing good is ever going to come from that. Many beginners will avoid talking about price up front because they just want the job so badly and they don't want to like screw it up, or because it's usually with family and friends approaching them and they feel weird about it. But let me tell you, what's even weirder is having to have the super awkward conversation after you've done the work where you're like, how about you pay me this much? Or how about you pay me that much? You end up devaluing yourself and it's super awkward. Or even worse, you tell them the right price, which is probably pretty high, and they're like, oh, I didn't think it was gonna be that much. I can't afford that, never mind. And then you get stuck with the job that you've actually already done and they don't wanna pay you for it. So long story short, always discuss the price up front. Don't do the job until you've agreed on it. And even better, always get a 50% deposit before you even start. Mistake number 2 is only charging hourly for your work. So it is really important to know your hourly rate. One of the biggest mistakes I see beginners making with pricing is that they don't actually ever properly calculate their hourly rate and then they end up making way less than minimum wage. And I'm not gonna walk you through how to calculate your hourly rate right now because we go over that in the free workshop I mentioned. The link is below. But I do wanna talk about why you shouldn't always just charge using your hourly rate. When I say don't charge hourly, you might be like, well, what's the alternative? So the alternative is project-based pricing or flat rate pricing. So hourly rate would be telling your client, you can hire me for $80 an hour to complete this project. Whereas project-based pricing would be, you can hire me for a flat rate of $2,000 to complete this project. Most beginners default to charging hourly. So a client approaches you with a project, you tell them you'd be happy to work on it and that your hourly rate is $40 an hour. It's by far the easiest way to quote, and that's fine, but not in all instances. So the problem with hourly rate is that it gets tricky when, for example, A, you get more experience and you work quickly. If you work quickly or efficiently because you're experienced, you're actually penalizing yourself because less hours means less money. So technically, the more experienced you are, the less money you make, which is super backwards. Or scenario B, you don't have a clear idea of how many hours it's gonna take you. So your client has no idea what to expect. Is it gonna take you 2 hours, so $80, or is it gonna take you 12 hours, so $480? This can really tick a client off if they're not expecting it. There are other instances where hourly pricing has some major cons, but those are the main 2. Project-based pricing, on the other hand, allows you to avoid those problems and often helps you make a lot more money. So with project-based pricing, it'd look more like a client approaching you with a project, and then you ask them lots of questions, you get the whole story, and you start to make some estimations on how much time and work you think it'll be. Then you take that ballpark time estimate and you do the math against your hourly rate, so you still need your hourly rate. Then you add in all these other factors based on the exact job, and you come up with a flat fee to quote the client. So the client gets a total all-inclusive number and they're not wondering. It also means that if you work quickly, you're gonna get paid that flat fee no matter how long it took you. Project-based pricing can definitely feel scarier because it means quoting bigger numbers in the beginning, but in the long term, it's way better for you and your business, in most cases. We talk about this way more in the Panic-Free Pricing course, but I also have a whole debate about this topic with 4 other artists in this video, so you should go watch that later too. Long story short, only pricing hourly is a mistake that most beginners make until they're told otherwise. Okay, and mistake number 3 that gets me really fired up is discounting, and I'm totally guilty of having done this in the beginning too. Most commonly, discounting happens for friends and family because it's like as soon as you open up a business, people whose unconditional support you're counting on to start your business are the ones who automatically assume that they're entitled to a discount. So I'm just gonna say this up front. My policy is an absolute no to discounts, ever. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to charge your friends and family full price every single time, or that I do. In fact, it actually means the opposite, because for them, it's free. And you might be like, well, isn't free worse than discounting? We talk about this a ton in the free workshop. Again, the link is down below, but let me explain this in a nutshell. So the basic concept is this. If you're really close enough to someone to really want to do them a favor and to give them a deal, then do it 100% free. And if not, do it 100% full price. Then, and this is key, you have to invoice them the same way no matter what. So indicate on your invoice the full value of the project no matter what, but if it's someone that you're doing it for free for, you just total it to 0 at the bottom. This is amazing for 2 different reasons. Number 1, you're never devaluing your product by discounting it. In both of these instances, whether you do it full price or free, the value of your product or service is not going to decrease. Both the client who gets the item for free and the client who paid full price, they both know the value of what they're receiving. The second thing is you're never going to run into issues with having to decide who you're going to discount for. You do free for your closest friends and family, and everyone else is full price, period. You never have to have that awkward, like, am I discounting for a friend of a friend, or, where do you draw the line question? It always gets murky when you have to do it that way and you feel weird. So using the full price or free method, you can avoid all of that. You pick who gets free work and who doesn't, and you stick to it, no guilt. Again, we talk about this so much more in the workshop, but this is like my favorite revelation ever I had when it came to pricing, because I used to discount everything if I just knew someone. Even if it was just like a friend of a friend that I didn't actually know very well, I felt like I had to. And I ended up discounting almost everything I did in the start because mostly everything I did was word of mouth. But once I stopped, it was such a game changer, and I want that for you too. Okay, and lastly, I have a bonus mistake. Number 4. Thinking you have to charge lower because you're a beginner. You don't have to do that. I'd say this is the toughest one for beginners to get past because it makes sense in your head, right? You're newer, so you shouldn't charge as much. But that isn't always the case, and more often than not, you're actually probably shooting yourself in the foot by doing that. This one we talk a lot about in the workshop, so make sure you're signed up for that using that link down below. So with all those tips out in the open, tell me in the comments which one of these you were most guilty of. I'm just genuinely curious because I made all these mistakes at the beginning. And then again, make sure you're signed up for that free workshop. It's called the 5 Keys to Confident Pricing. And if you've ever felt a little bit iffy or nervous about your pricing, it's gonna help you, I promise. So I hope to see you in that workshop, but either way, I'm gonna link you now to another pricing video, and I'll see you over there.